Hi, welcome to the video on the effect of trauma on skills. My name is Lynn LaPointe, and I'm a board-certified behavior analyst. I'm here on behalf of the Alabama Psychiatric Medication Review Team, a collaboration between Alabama's Department of Human Resources and the Auburn University Department of Psychology. This is the second video of a 3-video series designed to help you better understand how trauma can affect your foster child's behavior. In this first video, I gave you an overview of trauma and showed you how to communicate empathy to a child who may have experienced trauma. In the third video, I showed you how to effectively teach a child how to complete self-care and chore skills. In today's video, I will illustrate how trauma can affect your foster child's completion of self-care or chore skills. Let's get started. First, let's review what self-care and chore skills are. Self-care skills are daily activities that we do to take care of our physical health. For example, washing hands is a self-care skill, while playing video games is not. Brushing your teeth is another self-care skill, while watching TV is not a self-care skill. Other examples of self-care skills include brushing hair, taking a shower or bath, trimming your fingernails, flossing your teeth, and getting dressed. While we may take some of these skills for granted, our foster children may have a difficult time completing these skills. I'll explain why in a little bit. It's also important that our foster children complete these skills so they gain some independence and learn how to complete each of these skills appropriately. What are chore skills? Chore skills are routine household tasks. For example, wiping down the counter and cleaning up your room are appropriate chore skills for children. Helping mom cook dinner and food prep may not be age-appropriate chore skills for some children. It's important for our children to complete chore skills so they feel like a part of the family and so they have some responsibility in our homes. But we need to make sure that these chore skills are age-appropriate. Age-appropriate chore skills for our 2 to 3-year-olds include making their bed, taking their clothes to the laundry, putting their clothes away, and cleaning up their toys. Now, our 2 to 3-year-olds may need some extra assistance with some of these chores, but it's a great way for them to learn. Age-appropriate chores for 4 to 5-year-olds include loading the dishwasher, except for sharp objects and knives, setting the table, watering the plants, helping to feed pets, matching socks, and cleaning the room. Appropriate chore skills for 6 to 9-year-olds include sweeping, sorting laundry, wiping down counters, helping with meal prep, emptying the dishwasher, and pulling weeds. And finally, for our teenagers who are 13 years or older, appropriate chore skills include making meals or meal planning, cleaning out the refrigerator, babysitting, and mowing the lawn. Again, it's important that we have age-appropriate chore skills for our children because we really want to set them up for success and not for failure. However, even though a specific chore skill may be age-appropriate for our foster child, our child may still have a difficult time completing that skill. I'll explain why shortly. Now that we know what self-care and chore skills are, how does trauma affect the completion of these self-care and chore skills? Remember from our first video that trauma is severe emotional shock caused by an extremely upsetting event, and that abuse and neglect are forms of trauma. Remember that abuse is the improper or excessive use of treatment, like the excessive use of harsh words. And remember that neglect is failing to care for another individual. For example, when a child is left alone for an extended period of time. Essentially, trauma can cause some type of skill deficits in our self-care and chore skills. So how does abuse, neglect, and trauma relate to these skill deficits in self-care and chore skills? First, our children may have limited examples or no examples at all of how to complete the self-care and chore skills. If a child experienced neglect growing up in which the parents weren't around and didn't provide examples of how to get dressed, the child may have a skill deficit in this area. Second, the self-care or chore skill could have been used as a punishment tactic in the home. So for example, if a child came home from school with a note from the teacher indicating that the child had poor behavior at school, and the parent assigns chores to complete as punishment, those chores can serve as punishment for the bad behavior at school. And in the future, because the chores were a part of punishment, the child may not complete the chores in the future. Lastly, skill deficits in self-care and chore skills could be related to unpleasant associations between the traumatic event and that self-care or chore skill. For example, if a child was sexually abused at bath time, the child may avoid bath time because of those unpleasant memories. Or if a child was beat while cleaning his or her bedroom, the child may avoid cleaning his or her bedroom in the future because of those traumatic memories. So while it may seem that our foster child is acting disrespectful, is lazy, or is non-compliant with the completion of skills, his or her lack of completion could actually have more to do with the trauma that he or she has experienced and less to do with actually being lazy. Now, let's go over some additional examples of how abuse, trauma, and neglect are related to skill deficits in self-care and chore skills. Scenario 1. Tabitha is a 6-year-old who grew up in a home where she was left alone for hours at a time. Now that she is in foster care, her foster parents report that her room is always messy, and she leaves her backpack, toys, and other belongings all over the house. Is this example demonstrating abuse, neglect, or trauma? This is an example of neglect in the form of lack of supervision. Tabitha had a history of being left alone, and she wasn't taught how to properly clean her room. Let's move on to the next scenario. Scenario 2. Jason is an 8-year-old who grew up in a home where his mother and grandmother were constantly writing him about completing his chores perfectly. There were times when Jason's grandmother whipped him for not folding the laundry or doing the dishes well. Jason was scared to even attempt his chores at home because he knew it would never be good enough. Once Jason was moved to a foster family, he wouldn't even attempt his assigned chores. How can we explain Jason's situation now that we know about abuse, trauma, and neglect? Ultimately, Jason experienced trauma in the form of physical abuse and verbal abuse. Because of the negative associations that came with completing his chores, he doesn't even attempt his chores within his foster home. Let's move on to the last scenario. Scenario 3. Devin is a 15-year-old who was neglected by his parents throughout his life. Upon entering foster care at the age of 14, Devin's foster parents reported that he did not know how to complete age-appropriate self-care tasks, like showering and putting on deodorant, that their 10-year-old biological son knows how to complete. As his foster parents say, he does not even know when to take a shower. In this scenario, how is trauma affecting Devin? It is clear that Devin experienced some sort of neglect and didn't have the necessary examples to teach him how to complete these important self-care tasks. Now it's up to his foster parents to help him get caught up and learn these skills. While these situations are very sad and a scary reality, it's important for us as foster parents to understand why our children may be lacking in some of these self-care and chore skills. It's also important for us to understand that we can help our children gain some independence with these skills and to gain some confidence in completing these skills. In our third video, I will teach you how to teach our foster children how to complete necessary self-care and chore skills. I hope this video has been helpful in reviewing how trauma, neglect, and abuse may be connected to skill deficits in self-care and chore skills. On behalf of the Alabama Psychiatric Medication Review Team, see you next time.